Good day, everyone. I am Alimi Akinda Papas. I'm here to put you through what learning outcomes and learning activities are all about. Let's go. Permit me to share my screen. As I said earlier, I'm here to put you through the learning outcomes and activities or module elements. So these are the presentation outlines. So we are here to understand what learning outcomes are all about, then what learning activities are all about. So what exactly do we understand by the term learning outcomes? So learning outcomes are statements that describe significant and essential learning that learners must achieve and can be reliably demonstrated at the end of a study unit or a course. Learning outcomes identify what the learner will know and be able to do by the end of a study unit or a course. I had an experience with a student. I had a conversation with the students last session. The student was trying to explain the kind of problems he encountered during the last semester. When he explained everything, I discovered that the problem that the student had is that the student could not actually understand what learning outcomes, learning objectives, and the learning activities are all about. So when I try to explain that this is your problem, and I try to explain to him what learning outcomes and learning activities are all about, and the subsequent semester that the students had an experience with, it performed better and excellently. So this prompts me to explain what learning outcomes and learning activities are all about. So as I was saying, learning outcomes are statements that describe significant and essential learning that learners must achieve and can reliably demonstrate at the end of a study unit or a course. Learning outcomes identify what the learner will know and be able to do by the end of a study unit or a course. So the following are the essential elements of the learning outcomes. One, it has to be student-centered. What do I mean by student-centered? Learning outcomes are phrased in such a way that it has to be framed in the perspective of the students and are written in a language that can be easily understood by the students. Student must be able to, once you have structured learning outcomes, student must be able to understand that particular learning outcome. That's why it has to be framed in a student-centered way. So another interesting element of learning outcomes is learning outcomes has to be measurable. Learning outcomes are specific, observable, and can be assessed. So that is the reason why we said it has to be measurable. The instructor, they usually use an action verb to structure or to frame their learning outcomes. So another interesting element of learning outcomes is it has to be concise. Learning outcomes are written in short, succinct sentences to the extent that it doesn't need to be long, it has to be short. The learning outcomes has to be short. Then learning outcomes has to be meaningful. Learning outcomes emphasize higher order thinking and consistent with university program curriculum. Another thing is it has to be achievable. The total number of learning outcomes for the population of students and this must be achievable within the time frame. That is, learning outcomes should be structured in such a way that students should be able to finish them up within the time frame allotted to them. Then, last but not the least, learning outcomes has to be outcome-based. Outcome-based is the sense that it should specify the skills and knowledge that the student must demonstrate to prove mastery instead of focusing on their assignments, format, or quizzes and some other things. So those are the essential elements of the learning outcomes. So I will try as much as possible to showcase a particular course that include a complete learning outcomes. Let's go on. So this is an example of how to structure a learning outcomes. When you have a particular course and you have a particular topic, after you have introduced that particular course, so the next line of action is to give your students the learning outcomes for that particular topic. So this is an example of learning outcomes. When you have started this session, you should be able to define financial accounting. You should be able to explain nature of accounting, and you should be able to discuss accounting principles. If you look at these three learning outcomes, you should be able to understand that the elements of learning outcomes are imbibed here. One of the elements that we talked about is it has to be what? Student center. It is the responsibility of students to define what accounting, financial accounting is all about. It is their responsibility to know the definition of financial accounting. Then it is also their responsibility to explain the nature of accounting. And lastly, it is their responsibility to discuss accounting principle. That is why it is what? It is student-centered. Another interesting element that can be featured here is measurable. So all these learning outcomes that we are seeing, they are measurable. Measurable in the sense that they are specific, they are observable, and they can be what? Assessed. You can assess your students from these learning outcomes that we just structured. So that is why we need to understand the fact that our learning outcomes need to be what? Need to be measurable. Then it has to be concise. If you look at this learning outcome, it is not necessarily long. It is not long. It is short and succinct. All the sentences in these learning outcomes, they are what? They are short and succinct. So then another interesting thing is meaningful. Define financial accounting. It is meaningful. Explain the nature of accounting. It is also meaningful. Discuss accounting principles. It is also what? Meaningful. So those are the elements that you can understand from what? From the perspective of what? Learning outcomes. And if you look at these learning outcomes, it is achievable. You can achieve it within the time frame that the instructor gives to students. So that is that about the learning outcomes. Before we move to the activities, let me just try to showcase a particular course or a particular topic that talks about this learning outcome. So let me share my screen. So let me share. So this is the so now if you can see this screen. So this course is talking about ACA 314, that is Intermediate Accounting 2. So this is the first topic in this particular course, that is Introduction to Intermediate Accounting. So if you look at how this course is structured, the first things that we can understand here is the introduction. This course introduces us to what intermediate accounting is all about. So then the next, immediately after the introduction, we have the learning outcome. So, and this learning outcome is what the students should be able to understand, that at the end of the study or at the end of this particular course or at the end of this particular topic, the students should be able to understand or to explain the concept of intermediate accounting. Students should be able to enumerate and discuss the application of intermediate accounting. And lastly, students should be able to discuss the application of generally accepted accounting principles and the actions of FASB. So if you look at these learning outcomes, you understand the fact that those elements that we can find in learning outcomes, they are here. So if you look at this learning outcome, the first element that we discussed the other time is that it is student-centric. It is student-centered in the sense that students are saddled with the responsibility of understanding or explaining what the concept of intermediate accounting is. They are also saddled with the responsibility of enumerate and discuss the applications of intermediate accounting. And lastly, they are also saddled with the responsibility of discuss the application of generally accepted accounting principles and the actions of FASB. So those are the responsibilities that students are expected to achieve at the end of this session. When students read this particular topic, at the end of this topic, students should be able to boldly say that he or she understand what concept of intermediate accounting is all about, application of intermediate accounting, and lastly, the application of generally accepted accounting principles and the actions of FASB. Then if you look at this learning outcome, we discover that this learning outcome is concise. The sentences there are succinct and clear. So they are measurable as well. Do you understand? And they are meaningful and they can be achieved within the time frame. So that is what the learning outcomes is telling us. So students are expected to achieve the following at the end of this particular course. So that is that about the learning outcomes. So now let's try to move on to our discussion here. So now, I said the next line of actions after these learning outcomes is the activities on the LMS. So we have various forms of activities on the LMS. So, but the most important of them are quiz, assignment, exams, forum, then rubric. So students can be accessed using the following forms of activities. Do you understand? All these activities are grouped into two. We still have what is referred to as workshop as well. So we have formative assessment and we have summative assessment. When we are talking about formative assessment, the first thing that we think about is this assessment measures how a student is learning during the course of study. How a student is learning during a course of study. That is formative assessment. If you look at the learning outcomes I showed you the other time, you discover as the student learn understand each learning outcomes from the materials, the student should be able to see or understand whether he actually understands what the learning outcome is all about through some questions that are imbibed within the learning outcomes. So we call them in-text questions. So immediately the in-text questions, we have in-text answers. I will show you what I mean by in-text questions and in-text answers when I finish this explanation. So this formative assessment measures how a student is learning during the course of study. During his learning, whatever the assessments that we give to students is what we refer to as what? Formative assessment. And most times it is not what? It is not graded. So why the summative assessment is designed to measure how much, that's the word, to measure how much a student has learned after a unit or a course has reached its completion. That is it. After a unit or a course has reached its completion. So summative assessment measures how much student has learned after the student have completed the whole course. So that is why we have exams, we have quiz and some other things. So now, student can be accessed using the following. We have quiz, assignment, exam, forum, and rubric. What do I mean by rubric? Rubric are multi-dimensional set of scoring guidelines that can be used to provide consistency in evaluating students' work. Students, when instructor provide rubric to students mark their peers. So the rubric is just like a guideline that the student must follow to mark their peers. They cannot mark themselves, or unless the instructor instruct the computer that students can also mark themselves, because they have the rubric already, they have the guideline to follow, they have the scoring grid to mark their peers. So that is that about the rubric. So activities for different form of assessment, I've explained this. I've explained what formative assessment and summative assessment are all about. Formative is when the students learn during a course or a unit. Do you understand? Then summative assessment is after the completion of the whole course. So you assess the student based on what he has learned after the course has reached its completion. So that we have formative assessment examples and we have summative assessment examples. Formative assessment examples include gamified quizzes, CBT quizzes with instant feedback, then we have workshops. So under the summative assessment examples, we have CBT quizzes without instant feedback. We have TMA, that is tutor mark assignment. Then we have final exams. The CBT simply means computer-based test. So those are the various forms of assessment that we have. And the student must be tested using these various forms of assessment. So then, after which, let me try to explain what this formative assessment, what these summative assessments are all about. Let me start with the formative assessment. And we said one of the examples of formative assessment is gamified quiz or gamified quizzes. Gamified quizzes are quizzes that are created in form of a game. So it's just to create fun to students. Students will learn through this this gamified quiz in such a way that they will feel the enthusiasm, the curiosity, that is the fun embedded in that particular learning experience. So that is why we have what is referred to as gamified quizzes. So, and popular gamified quiz application that we have quizzes, we have Kahoot, we have Top Art, we have Brainscape, we have GameKit, we have Pocklet, we have Seesaw, and we have Quizlet Live. So those are the various forms of various examples of gamified application quizzes that we have. So CBT quizzes with or without instant feedback. You know, I explained something about CBT quizzes with instant feedback and CBT quizzes without instant feedback. So when it is instant feedback, it's also termed as what formative assessment, because once the students look at the quiz, look at the gamified quiz we are talking about, once the student pick a particular answer, the student will see the response immediately, whether the student is wrong or right. So that is an example of what CBT quizzes with instant feedback. So computer-based tests are the quizzes that are attempted via digital devices. So for summative assessment, the instant feedback is not recommended. Reason is that in summative assessment, the grades are always recorded. Do you understand? They are summative in the sense that when you provide the feedback, the student might see everything before, but immediately you give the student a particular quiz and you do not provide the feedback, when the student attends the quiz, often and often, you will get so many, you will learn so many things. But when the quiz has closed, the student can now see where the lack for summative assessment to give back. So that is that about quizzes with instant or quizzes without instant feedback. So this is an example of a Kahoot game quiz. We have a 8-year-old boy present with wrist pain after a fall on his outstretched hand. The X-ray is shown below. Which of the following is the correct type of injury? So if you look at this, if the correct answer is Soter-Harris type 1, and if you choose Soter-Harris type 4, you are wrong. So that is why this person choose A for this answer, but the answer is Soter-Harris type 1. So this is an example of, we have so many gamified quizzes. It can be embedded on the LMS or outside the LMS. So features of a game quizzes, we have some game quizzes can be created outside LMS and they can be inserted in the course. Do you understand? Then, when created outside the LMS, game quiz will be given an identifier or pin, which we allow students to identify the quiz. So that's one of the important features of what gamified quizzes. So, popular forms or format of CBT quizzes. We have various forms of CBT quizzes. I said something the other time. I said CBT quizzes, they are summative assessment. They are always graded. Students should understand this. CBT quizzes without instant feedback are always graded and can come in various forms. One of the forms of it is multiple choice single answer or multi-choice single answer. Multi-choice single answer in the sense that students are allowed to pick just only one correct answer. Students are allowed to pick just only one correct answer. That's this why we call it multi-choice. We have so many options, and the student will be allowed to pick just only one correct answer. If the student pick the wrong answer, the computer will mark the student wrong. Then we have multi-choice, multiple answers. In these forms of our CBT quiz, what this one is trying to explain to us is that students are allowed to pick more than one answer. More than one answer in the sense that students are provided with several options, but the answer are just more than one. So students are expected to pick more than one options. So more than one correct options. Any answer picked that are not correct, students will be marked wrong. There are other forms of CBT quizzes is true or false type of questions, whereby the instructor will provide a question whereby students are expected to just pick either true or false. So person is a male, true or false. If you know that person and the person is a male, automatically you pick true. If you know that person and the person is what? Is a female, you pick false. Then we have short answer question. Short answer question in the sense that students are expected to write their correct options. Let me give you an instance. The instructor might say, the most important factor in international trade is dash. Students are expected to just write national interest. So the most important factor in international trade is national interest. So that is what the short answer is talking about. Then we have matching questions. Matching question is you match the relevant terms together. So I will show you each and every one of these forms of CBT quizzes in my next slide. Then we have embedded answer questions. This is also known as closed questions, whereby we have a missing words, drop down missing options. Then we have drag and drop questions. We have numerical questions in form of numbers. Then we have cross-matching questions, etc. Those are the various forms of CBT quizzes that we have. So these are the samples of questions format that we are talking about. Look at the first one. We have multiple choice, single answer. If you look at this multiple choice, single answer, what this one entails is that students are allowed to pick just only options here. Look at it. On a Windows PC, which of the following will you use to stop any non-responding application? Select one. This is an example of multiple choice, single answers. Many options are provided, but the students are expected to pick just one answer. So then we have multiple choice, multiple answers. So multiple choice, multiple answers simply means students are expected to pick more than one options. Identify which of the following is or are examples of operating systems. Select one or more. So students are expected to select more than one options here. Then the next one is we have short answer questions. Look at the questions now. In an email, the username and the domain name are separated by dash symbol. Students are expected to type their correct options here. So that's an example of short answer questions. So then another interesting question format that we have, we call it closed paragraph questions. So the sentence will be in form of paragraphs, and they will just try to remove some missing words or sentences from the paragraphs. So look at the device is said to be a computer if it takes an dash, then dash, the data or information it receives to produce an dash. So these are examples of closed paragraph questions. So the students are expected to supply their answers by typing the correct options. Then we have closed options questions. In the closed option questions, students are expected to click on this particular arrow so as to know the correct options here. Look at this one. We have that the dash refers to servers that are accessed over the internet. If the correct option is network, student will pick network. If the correct option is cloud, the student will pick cloud. And if the correct option is World Wide Web, the student will pick World Wide Web. So students are expected to pick the correct options from the drop-down arrow. Then we have cross-matching questions. Cross-matching questions in the sense that you are expected to match the relevant items together. So here we have GPU. The student is expected to click on this arrow and choose the correct matching item. So that is what we mean by cross-matching questions. So that is that about CBT quizzes. Another interesting activities that we must learn as far as our learning management system is concerned is assignment. So assignment is also a summative form of assessment, whereby students will be graded and the grade will be recorded for students at the end of the exams. So now, if you look at this form of assignment, it is structured in such a way that this assignment will be uploaded on the LMS for students. Immediately the student click on the assignment, student will see something of this nature. So look at the assignment. We have Ladoke University of Technology, Commercial, Department of Accounting, course code we have is 314. Then course title is learning outcome. Instruction, attempt all questions. Students are expected to read instruction for all the type of what? For all the type of assignment given to him or her. Instruction are very, very germane and very, very important. This instruction says attempt all questions. Students are expected to attempt all the questions, to lay their hands on all the questions. So, and what are the assignment talks about, or what is, let us look at what the assignment is telling us. What do you understand by learning outcomes? We have just two assignments here. What do you understand by learning outcomes? Then the second one is highlight the objectives of learning outcomes. So now these are the assignment, and you are expected to upload this assignment to your what? To your learning management system. The first thing that you do is you create a Word document. Let me just show you how to do that. Let me show you how to do that. So now let me show you how to do that. So when you have, the first thing that you do is you try as much as possible to create your Word, what is it called? Your Word document. And to do that, just try and open Word document. Let me open my Word document. Word document. So blank page. This is my Word document. So the next line of action is just type your name. My name is Alimi Akendapo Abbas, whatever your name is. Then your department is very important. So my department is accounting. So level, very important as well. So course code, course title. So these are the important things. So course title here is learning outcome. So course code is, this is the 314. I'm just using this as an example. Then my level is 300 level. So the next thing is you can justify this or centralize it, put it in Times New Roman, then font size to be 12, then you can bold it, then you start your. So what is the question all about? The question says, what do you understand by learning outcomes? Then you type your answer. You type your answer. Well, solution to question 1. So learning outcomes. So you supply your answer. Then solution to question 2. You say the question 2 talks about just need to highlight the objectives of learning outcomes. So you now say highlight the objective of learning outcomes. Learning outcomes have the following objectives. So, and then you mention it. So that is, after you might have done this, the next line of action is to, you don't need to put this. So the next line of action is to convert this, your document, to PDF before you upload. You convert your document what? To PDF. Let me show you how to do that. You click on File, you click on Save As if you want to save your file. So you must ensure that you save your file to a location whereby you can easily access your file. So let me save it to my desktop. So I will just say ACT314 assignment 1. Use a particular file name that you can easily recognize that particular assignment, because you may have ACT314 assignment. If it is not assignment 1, you might have a conflicting result here. So then we have to convert this thing. Ensure that you save your document to desktop. So under the Save As type, look at the PDF and save. Once you have saved it like this, you won't be able to edit it again. So you must have done everything before you save it as well as PDF. So after you might have done that, so the next thing is you try as much as possible to upload this particular assignment to your learning management system, in which the one of the speakers in this particular presentation will try as much as possible to address how to upload quizzes, how to upload assignments as a student to the LMS. So that is that about the learning outcomes and the learning activities from this perspective of the students. So thank you. Take good care of yourself. Bye.